Welcome to this episode of UXD, where we're going to talk about what context is and why it's critical to understanding how people use technology and how it affects their expectations from this technology. I'm your host, Nazmul Idris, a developer advocate passionate about design and mobile, and I have a very special guest with me on the show today.
Thanks, Nazmul. I'm Paul Saxman, also a developer advocate, and I love everything about maps, location-based apps, and likewise design.
Excellent, you're on the right show. There are a few main elements of context: time, goal, location, and attitude. A user's context is driven by the amount of time a user has to accomplish a goal, the tasks that the user needs to perform to accomplish this goal using a variety of different devices and applications. Where the user is physically located, are they at home, at work, at an airport? What the user's state of mind is, and are they happy, sad, stressed, seeking company, or wanting to be alone? All these things put together drive how people choose the devices they use, and it also affects their expectations from applications on these devices. Users have an expectation from technology, and oftentimes this expectation is not met by current products. Sometimes this dissonance is a result of creators of these products not understanding how small changes in elements of context have huge impacts on user expectations. So to deliver a great experience, you have to ensure that your app meets the user's expectations on specific devices for specific contexts. To highlight the interplay between context, device selection, and user expectations, we will give you some examples of common scenarios that people encounter in their daily lives and how these situations affect their interaction with different devices that they use to perform various tasks. So let's say you're at home, sitting in your living room, watching Walking Dead.
Your favorite show.
Yeah, exactly, on your TV. And you see an exotic location like Atlanta, and you want to do some research on vacation spots in that area. During the commercial break, you might pick up your tablet or laptop and use your favorite travel app to find vacation destinations in Atlanta. Now, since you're at home in a relaxed environment and are performing a task that's not really urgent, you're simultaneously watching TV and using your laptop or tablet to do some research. You're probably also checking your email and social media on your smartphone. People are distracted. Or let's say you're at an airport and you're checking in for your flight. You might want your boarding pass information, what gate to go to, and real-time flight status updates all on your smartphone. Since you're at an airport in a stressful environment and are performing many tasks that are really urgent, you're intermittently interacting with your smartphone and probably not your laptop or your tablet. Even though your attention is split amongst doing different things, the short bursts of interaction that you do have with your smartphone are really intense in this context. Or let's say you're on the go. You get hungry, you might want to find a place to eat nearby that meets your dietary preferences, and maybe even get recommendations from people you trust, all on your smartphone. Since you're out and need to get some food very soon, you're not really in the mood to do in-depth research on places to eat or wait around to make reservations. You're not really doing any researching or planning. Instead, you just want to find the best possible place to eat nearby on your smartphone. Paul, I will hand it over to you now.
So back to this example of traveling to Atlanta. You need to do some research, plan the trip, and then actually make the journey there, possibly using a variety of devices. So with you as a user in this example, let's look in detail of what context is and how it impacts the user expectations and their device selection. If you're not in a rush and you have time to do planning and research, you would probably use a laptop or tablet to start these tasks, but not necessarily complete them. You might choose to continue these tasks on different devices at a later time, or you might choose to restart the process on the same device. The key here is that the user has a lot of time in their hand to complete their tasks, so it's easy for them to switch between devices. However, data in the new Multi-Screen World Study published by Google shows that people tend to use laptops and tablets over smartphones for research and planning tasks, likely because of the larger screens and richer input. That's not to say you can ignore smartphones. About 34% of people will generally reach for the device that's closest to them. So always keep smartphones in mind when building apps, because although it's not the ideal device for research tasks, your user might reach for them out of convenience.
I do that all the time.
Likewise. If you're not going to travel soon, in a matter of weeks, then you would probably want to book your flights and hotel. This is going from research to planning. Again, you might use a tablet to start these planning tasks and complete them on a laptop or vice versa. People do tend to use laptops over tablets for productivity tasks, such as booking a flight, hotel, or rental car, but it's not uncommon for people to use tablets for augmenting or wrapping up planning.
That makes sense.
On the day of your travel, you might want to get your boarding pass, get a taxi to the airport, get terminal and flight updates, that type of thing. These are all types of tasks that people tend to do on their smartphones. It's not likely that you would want to pull out your laptop or tablet while picking up your boarding pass or finding your way to the terminal. Also, you'd probably expect to use your smartphone to retrieve information you need when you need it. Ideally, your smartphone would make important information available automatically without even asking, just like Google Now. When things are urgent and you have lots of tasks to do that are time sensitive, people tend to use their smartphones as a way to execute tasks rather than research or plan. Also in these situations, people don't have much patience for hiccups in the user experience, and it's best to provide a solid and minimal experience that allows the user to do what they want quickly and smoothly. As we saw in the time examples, tasks can be dependent on both time and location. Actually, most of the aspects of context are interrelated somehow. However, each can have some independent influence on how you build an app. So to ensure that you're covering all possible user scenarios, you should try to consider each variable independently. So continuing with the Atlanta example, let's look what happens when we focus on the task aspect of context. You'd likely perform the following tasks, possibly independently, in order to accomplish your goal of traveling to Atlanta. Again, travel research is something that you'd probably start weeks before actually traveling. During the research phase, you would likely try to figure out what neighborhood you want to stay in while Atlanta, and also check out hotels to book. For research, people's expectations of apps and devices is that content consumption should be painless, and the amount of user input is minimal. In other words, for supporting research, an app should be optimized for content consumption, but not necessarily content creation. And again, you might want to switch back and forth between these devices to accomplish this task, so be sure to keep user entered data like starred hotels or planning places to visit on the servers so that it can be available between sessions on different devices. Planning is something that you might want to do a week or two before traveling. Planning tasks for travel include booking flights, hotels, rental cars. Your expectations of an app used for planning would likely be that content creation should be effortless, since you might have to input a lot of data. So apps optimized for planning should allow for easy data entry and also easy content consumption. And again, you might switch back and forth between these devices to accomplish this task. You might want to retrieve critical data a few days before traveling, but you most likely need access to critical data the day of traveling. This includes information like flight status, hotel reservations, and boarding passes, and other information as you move from one form of transit to another until you reach your destination. Since you're on the go, people would use a smartphone to accomplish all these tasks. It's highly unlikely that you would do any of these tasks on tablets or laptops. Your expectations of apps that you're using on smartphones are quite stringent. You would want single-handed navigation, minimal interaction with the apps to get your content, and you would want the app to actually proactively notify you of things via notifications when critical information that impacts your itinerary changes. What you're not expecting is a lot of content consumption or creation, so the content has to be presented in a way that you can consume in a quickly without much attention. Your interactions with the device is bursty, short, and intense.
We're definitely going to do more episodes on that. That's a pretty heavy topic.
Indeed. Yeah, location, task, and time are very critical points.
Yes.
And finally, let's look at what happens when we focus on location aspect of context. Depending on what your physical location is, what tasks you would need to perform, and the time you had to perform them changes. You might perform research and planning tasks when you're at home, on your sofa, or at a desk. Your time frame for getting these tasks completed can vary from many weeks to research to a few weeks for planning. Your expectations from apps that you're using is that you should have a signed-in experience where they allow you to seamlessly move between devices. Another expectation you have is that content consumption should be easy for research tasks, and some content creation should be easy for planning tasks.
We're definitely going to do a show on the signed-in experience.
That's a whole other show on its own. You might perform retrieval tasks when you're on the go, and your time frame for getting these tasks completed can vary from urgent, or right now, to sometime this week. User research data in the study suggests that people use smartphones when the urgency is high and they're on the go. So you have an expectation from apps that you're using that you should be aware of current location and be able to deliver information to you in an uncluttered manner so that you don't have to spend a lot of attention on the device. Another expectation is that you get notifications of important things that will impact your itinerary, but you don't want to be overwhelmed with too many notifications since you're going to be doing other things while interacting with your smartphone in intense bursts.
It's like the constant interplay between machine narcissism and self-awareness for the application. So again, topics for other shows.
Very cool.
Now let's take a look at what happens when we focus on the social aspect of context. So you've talked a lot about how time, task, and location has an impact on what people expect. And what we're going to show you is that those three things come together and they also drive what you're expecting out of your applications or experiences and devices from a social perspective. So when you're at home or at work, you might want to perform some research tasks when you have a lot of time on your hands. In this scenario, you might want to collaborate with coworkers if the trip to Atlanta is a business trip, or with family members if it's a personal trip. If you're performing some planning tasks and have less time on your hands than you do for research, then you might want to share your itinerary with coworkers or family and find out what restaurants, for example, people you know would recommend in Atlanta, and then actually make some reservations. So people tend to use a tablet or laptop when doing this sort of collaboration. Your expectations from applications you're using on these devices are that it should be easy to consume lots of content, but do a little bit of content creation. But the collaboration aspect is part of content creation, and the sharing of information is part of creation and consumption. So basically, you should be able to do a little bit of both. Now, when you're on the go, you might want to perform some retrieval tasks, and many of these tasks might be urgent. In this scenario, you might just want to get visibility into others' activities. For example, you might want to get commute updates and see when your coworkers or family members have arrived at their destination or where they are in transit and so on. That would be a really cool app. The multi-screen world report suggests that people use smartphones when doing this, which makes sense. However, the other people in this scenario, that is your coworkers or family members or friends, might be using tablets or laptops or smartphones. So managing expectations around social expectations is really complicated. And there are so many constituents that you have to keep in mind when doing this. Google Now is a great example. So if you turn on commute sharing, it will notify people in the circles that you've chosen to actually get these updates without you actually having to do anything on your smartphone. They get notifications and you just go about your day. Finally, let's look at what happens when we focus on the mood aspect of context. Where you are, how much time you have, and what tasks you need to perform have a big impact on your mood or attitude when performing these tasks. And again, this drives your expectations in a big way. I know this is complicated, but it's complicated because it is complicated.
That's a crazy interplay.
Yeah, exactly. So every little thing is related to everything else. So if you're at home or at work and doing research tasks with lots of time to complete them, then you might be in a relaxed mood, you might be lazy, and open to collaboration. This drives the expectations that you have around what social experience you want from the application and the device that you're using. And it also determines how eager you are to select the right device for the task. For example, you might just use whatever is closest to you rather than getting to the right device, the most appropriate one for the task at hand. So you might use a smartphone that's close by instead of picking up a laptop, which might be in the next room, to do heavy content consumption or even content creation. However, since you're more relaxed in this context, you are more willing to put up with the more constrained form factor. Now, if you increase the urgency in this scenario, then your motivation to actually get the appropriate device for the task goes way up. Human beings are complicated. Always. Now, imagine if you're on the go, the big change that you have is in your mood is that you might be more stressed, simply because there are time constraints. There's a lot of stimulus from your external environment. You could be in an unfamiliar place. So already your cognitive load is higher from simply being outside and not being in a relaxed environment like your home, assuming your home is a relaxed environment. Retrieval tasks that you might want to perform might be quite urgent, and this adds to your stress. And this drives your expectation from the smartphone and the apps that you're using on them. They need to be accurate, aware of where you are, and give you updates that you need in real time. And the battery can't be drained either. And the location readings should be accurate. So even though you might be using the same application and device in your living room, by simply changing your mood from relaxed to stress, it greatly changes the expectations you have from that particular application and device. So we encourage you to read this wonderful research study titled The New Multi-Screen World that has a lot of information that provides more insights into how people use technology. The report shows us that people have certain expectations from tablets and laptops. However, on smartphones, they expect a little bit of everything. So keep this notion of context in mind when you create your application experiences on multiple devices. There are a lot of constraints that you should be mindful of, and we've covered some of them in this episode, and we'll do more episodes to cover them in great detail. And know that if you violate these constraints, then you're more likely to deliver a bad user experience. I want to thank Paul again for being on the show. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.